What's up everybody, welcome back to another Lorcana video here on Inkspot Games, and today I'm going to be giving you, in my opinion, the 5 best Ruby cards in the game right now, in the first chapter set. Now, before we get into it, there's a couple things. First, this really is in no particular order, so if you want to rearrange them to whatever order you want, that's fine. Second, we are also going to have 3 honorable mentions. And third, this is just my opinion, so if you disagree, that's cool. You might have a different list. The card pool is pretty limited, so it is fairly obvious which cards are good. But again, this is just my personal opinion. This isn't law, but we're just going to get right into it. And first things first, the first card I want to look at as one of my what I think is one of the best Ruby cards here is Maui. Now, Maui has 6 attack, 5 defense, and it has rush, and only costs 5 ink, and he's also an inkable card. So basically, he can challenge the turn he is played. So he is an excellent piece of potential removal, considering that he has 6 offense on him, and he can kind of take your opponent by surprise. Now, the downside is that he can't quest, he can't get any lore, but again, he's really hard to deal with, and he deals out a lot of damage and can deal out a lot of damage right away to challenge your opponent's cards. So I think Maui is definitely a card you should have in really any Ruby style deck. So he is the first on my list. The next card is actually right next to him. We have Maleficent. Now, I've been kind of back and forth on this card just because of the high cost, which is 9 ink. But again, this is also an inkable character. Has Dragonfire. Is when you play this character, you may banish a chosen character, which is insane. That's an insane piece of removal on a character card. A lot of other cards, when you play them, they might remove another player's character off the board, but might put it in their inkwell or something. This just straight up banishes it. Not to mention the 7 offense and 5 protection that Maleficent has, Monstrous Dragon by the way, and also gets a nice 2 lore when it quests. But again, a great piece of spot removal. And like I said before, at first I was kind of concerned about the cost of 9, but in a lot of red decks, especially if you pair it with Sapphire, you can ramp up on ink pretty consistently. So if you have this card, if you draw this card and your opponent sets up one of their big bosses, Maleficent can just take it out completely. Again, it can challenge characters with ease and banish them without banishing itself, and you can get 2 lore from Maleficent, which is also really good. This wasn't a card I first would include in my Ruby decks, but now I think it might be a staple in Ruby decks. So the next Ruby card we have here is Dragonfire, just one of the best overall just cards in this game, in my opinion. Probably one of the best and cheapest pieces of spot removal that you can have. It's not inkable, it costs 5 ink, it is an action card, and the text is very simple. The text basically says, banish chosen character. Now, again, there's no real cost to this except for ink, and getting to a point where you're at 5 ink in this game isn't that difficult, especially if you're pairing this with another color that can ramp up on ink pretty quickly, again, like a color like Sapphire. There's no, banish a character and lose a lore, or banish a character, discard card. Nope, straight up spot removal, banish chosen character, you pay 5, that's it. I just think this is one of the best cards in the game, probably the best piece of removal in the game, because except for the cost of 5 ink, it has no real drawback on you. Obviously, there might be a drawback depending on if the character you banish has some kind of effect once it's banished, but if not, this card can just really disrupt your opponent in such a big way, and I just think it's incredible, honestly. Moving on to the next card, we have Aladdin Heroic Outlaw. So this is another one of the bosses in the Ruby card pool, where he costs 7, he is inkable, has 5 offense, 5 defense, is a shift 5. You may pay 5 ink to play this on top of your character's name, Aladdin. That's just depending on if you are playing another Aladdin card in your deck. But it has Daring Exploit. During your turn, whenever this character banishes another character in a challenge, you gain 2 lore and your opponent loses 2 lore. So this card is doing a lot all at once. Not only does it have big stats to banish an opponent's card, but you are not only gaining 2 lore, which is, by the way, the amount of lore that Aladdin can gain by questing, but your opponent is also losing 2 lore. So let's just recap on what just happened there. Their character is gone, is banished. You gain 2 lore, and they lost 2 lore, which is a 4 lore swing, and they can lose advantage on their board because of him. And he only costs 7, which isn't that much for a character of this caliber. This card does a lot. I think this card can really swing a game. The only real downside is that when he's banished, when he's challenged, he doesn't get that effect. But again, if he's able to do that once and you quest and then he's gone, or he's able to get that effect twice, then that's a lot of good value from a 7 cost character, or a 5 if you play him on top of another Aladdin. And again, he is also inkable. So I think Aladdin is one of the best, arguably the best character in the Ruby card pool. Before I get to my last card, I do want to get to my 3 honorable mentions. First, we have Gaston, and he is a 2-cost inkable character with 4 offense, 2 blocking, and he has Reckless. This character can't quest and must challenge each turn if able. So while he doesn't have much blocking, he is a very cheap kind of piece of removal almost, because he has 4 attacks. So if you play him for only 2 ink, chances are you'll be able to banish one of your opponent's characters with Gaston. He is technically a piece of removal, which is just so important in this game. And again, he is inkable, so if you don't find yourself in that position, it's not really that bad to throw him in the ink well. The second honorable mention, and some people might have even put this on the top 5 list, is Mulan, a 5-costed inkable character with 4 offense, 5 blocking, and the effect is Lead by Example. During your turn, whenever this character banishes another character in a challenge, your other characters get +1 lore this turn. Now, Mulan is interesting because Mulan can do a lot, where Mulan can be a finisher almost by getting rid of an opponent's character, and then, let's say you have Mulan and a character with 2 lore on them, they all of a sudden get 3, and just adding that extra lore to multiple characters just gives you a lore advantage, a huge lore advantage actually, especially if you're able to build up your board. And also, if that happens and you bash your opponent's character, which now they have less advantage on you. I think the reason why I didn't put this in the top 5 is because to get full value of this card, you need to be able to build up a board, and a lot of the red cards are expensive, so you might not be getting an insane amount of value off of this, but when you do, this card can be game changing. So I can see why someone would put Mulan in their top 5 list. I think like Mulan is like just on the edge, like 5.5. It's one of the best red cards in the game though, for sure. And the last honorable mention is Mickey Mouse, Brave Little Tailor, kind of the poster boy of Lorcana right now. Has evasive. Evasive is obviously very good. Costs 8, is inkable, 5 offense, 5 blocking, and has 4 lore. And he's another one where you can argue putting him in your top 5, but the only problem with this is that he doesn't really have much of a sense of removal, and by the time you get him out with 8 ink, he's only 5/5, so most likely your opponent was able to ramp up on ink as well, so if you challenge or quest with him, he might not last that long on the board. But he does have 4 ink, and if you're able to, or 4 lore rather, if you're able to protect him, he's insane, especially if you pair him with Mulan. So again, some people might put this in the top 5 because of that lore count, and has decent stats and isn't even the most expensive character in this pool. Alright, but you know, he has evasive. There are other characters with evasive that can challenge him, but that's kind of his only bit of protection, and he doesn't even have removal. So like, the reason why I would put Maleficent in the top 5 instead of Mickey Mouse is because they both die to a piece of spot removal like Dragonfire or Let It Go or Hades or whatever. They both can die without being challenged, but you are getting, regardless of the amount of lore, you are getting good value from Maleficent because Maleficent is a piece of spot removal and gets 2 lore. But again, because of the 4 lore and the evasive and the fact that he's inkable, I can also see people putting him in their top 5. I just think you get more value and can break your opponent's board and turn the game around with other cards more effectively. So, in my opinion, the last card in the top 5, those were the 3 honorable mentions. So here is the best card, what I believe is in the Ruby pool, which is Be Prepared, which is a song. Be Prepared is insane. This card, game changing. It can turn a game around in an instant. This is a 7-costed non-inkable song. A character with a cost of 7 or more can sing this song for free, and it simply reads, banish all characters. So if you find yourself in a position, which I have many times against another deck that was able to ramp up and fill a board with a ton of characters, and you find yourself behind, all you have to do is play Be Prepared, and then boom, they're all gone. And there are a lot of situations where your opponent can't recover from that. Yes, you lose your cards too, so you need to strategically play Be Prepared, but if your opponent doesn't see it coming, or if your opponent is in a winning position and you draw this card and just completely clear their characters, then you have a fighting chance to make a comeback. Now, the only thing with this card is that it can turn the game into kind of a top deck war, but it gives you the best chance to come back and win the game, and your opponent basically used up a bunch of cards to set up a board, a bunch of ink to set up a board, so their hand might be a little low on cards anyway, and if you just completely clear it, then you find yourself in a good spot, and you find yourself with really good advantage. Be Prepared is insane. Whenever you're playing up against Ruby, you always have to account for it, especially when your opponent reaches that 7 ink threshold. So, this was my top 5 Ruby card list with 3 honorable mentions. Whether you agree or disagree, just remember, let's be respectful to each other. I'm sure everyone has their own list that they can come up with, and this is just what I thought were the best 5 Ruby characters in Lorcana, the first chapter. Hope you enjoyed, and I will see you on the next video. Later.